Mr. Speaker, I beg to present for second reading a bill shortly entitled the Youth Economy Agency. Mr. Speaker, on the 26th of April, Mr. Speaker, during my budget statement to this honorable House, I said the following. Mr. Speaker, one of the main challenges facing our country is youth unemployment, which remains high on the government's priority. Youth disenchantment continues to be a perennial problem, with over 15,000 young people unemployed. Despite several youth-related business programs conducted by NGOs and public and private sector agencies operating in St. Lucia. It is because my administration believes that every young person, irrespective of their socioeconomic circumstances, has the potential to make a positive contribution to the development of the community, that we have taken up the responsibility to address the apparent deficiencies in the existing youth-related business programs. In addressing these deficiencies, my government will not duplicate existing initiatives, but will support the ones that work and supplement them with new and innovative ideas that meet the needs and aspirations of the youth. In the last general election, we promised to create a special space in the economic system for young people to develop and grow their ideas, a youth economy. Mr. Speaker, the youth economy aims at transforming hobbies into entrepreneurship and skills into business by providing committed young people with finance, training, mentorship, and marketing support. The youth economy will provide support services and business opportunities for young persons with interest in activities such as sports, music, entertainment, the literary and performing arts, modeling, designing, writing and directing, agriculture, agro-processing, blue economy, and green economy. The youth economy will be managed through a statutory board with its own board of directors to avoid unnecessary bureaucracy and to allow for timely decision-making that is consistent with a modern business environment. The statutory board will collaborate in the formulation of outreach programs in communities with public and private sector social partners, with particular emphasis given to at-risk urban and rural youth. The membership of the board of directors will be gender balanced and with adequate youth representation. The statutory body will address 4 focal areas: training, marketing, finance, loans and grants, mentorship. Training will consist the strengthening of existing and viable business enterprises, identification of workable new business ideas and opportunities, research and development, innovation and technological upgrade, certification and capacity building with training in strategic planning, skill and talent development, emotional intelligence, and the implementation of international standards and best practices. Marketing to include market research, assistance with branding and packaging, to the use of e-commerce, website design development, and modernizing social media platforms. Finance and grants for the purchase of equipment for existing and viable businesses, the refurbishment of equipment and smart technologies, the provision of working capital, and support for new and emerging economic sectors in the blue, orange, and green economies. Talented youth from low-income families should not be denied the opportunity to monetize their skills because they cannot afford the necessary equipment. Talented young athletes should no longer be denied the opportunity to participate in regional and international competitions because of the lack of access to finance, to purchase sporting gear, and to secure travel arrangements. These impediments will be corrected. Mentorship. Mentorship will cover exposure and appreciation for best business practices, the development of discipline, the need to be accountable, and the value of persistence. In keeping with the government's commitment to the young people, an amount of $10 million is provided for the youth economy under the Department of Economic Development in the estimates for 2012-2013. The youth economy is the first step in transforming solution economy driven by technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship, where young people, regardless of their socio and economic backgrounds, can become more active participants in wealth and nation building. And Mr. Speaker, this is the thinking behind the bill that I'm presenting here this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, for the let me make it clear that the rumor that out of the $10 million, only 2%, only $2 million will be used for youth programs is, as usual, a rumor. And I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that in the acts, in the bill, on the section, what section coming? On the section, on the section 40, Mr. Speaker, you will see management of finances and application of revenue. The revenue of the agency in a financial year may be applied for the payment of interest and other charges on and the repayment of a loan payable by the agency. Remuneration payable under this act. Expenses incurred by the agency in the discharge of its functions under this act. Such expenses must not exceed 20% of the revenue of the agency without the written permission of the minister responsible for finance. So if the agency gets $10 million, 20%, you cannot spend more than 20% on administrative expenses. So the belief that only $2 million would be spent for development is wrong. So it's clear in the bill. So, Mr. Speaker, this Youth Economy Act, Mr. Speaker, sets up the Youth Economy Agency, Mr. Speaker. Yep. And, Mr. Speaker, as we said clearly, it's a statutory board that has the flexibility, Mr. Speaker, to run the Youth Economy Program. It's run by a board, Mr. Speaker, and it's also an evaluation committee. Mr. Speaker, I will take you to the board first so that we can deal with what the board ought to do, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Youth Economy Agency is run by a board. The functions of the agency are to implement the Youth Economy Program, to prepare and retain financial statements in respect of each financial year, to prepare a strategic plan, financial plan, operations plan, and business plans, to prepare estimates of revenue and expenditure, and to advise the minister on all matters relating to the Youth Economy Program, and to perform other functions specified in this act. These are the functions of the Youth Economy Agency, Mr. Speaker. The agency is run by a board, and the board comprises of the minister shall appoint 5 persons of the board from persons who have experience in and have shown capacity in matters relating to law, business management, career development, finance, entrepreneurship, information and communication technology, and youth development programs. The ex officio members of the board with no voting rights are the CEO and the permanent secretary of the ministry responsible for the youth economy. The minister shall designate 1 member of the board as the chairperson of the board, Mr. Speaker. The board is appointed for a term not exceeding 3 years. The functions of the board: to set the mission, values, strategic priorities, objectives, performance targets, and organizational policies of the agency; to prepare and submit to the minister a strategic plan for the Youth Economy Program; to monitor the performance of the agency against the strategic plan; to receive and approve applications for the Youth Economy Program, to review the performance of the Chief Executive Officer, to make recommendations to the Minister for the development of the Youth Economy Program. Mr. Speaker, the powers of the board, the powers of the board are to appoint and determine the functions and duties of a committee, to exercise any other powers specified under this Act or other enactments. And the board may, by resolution of its members, delegate its functions to one or more of its members, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the board comprises of an evaluation committee. The evaluation committee, and I'll tell you why, shall consist of the chairperson, the chief executive officer, and any other member of the board. So out of the board, 3 members form the evaluation committee. And what are the functions of the evaluation committee, Mr. Speaker? They are to review an application for access to the Youth Economy Program, to make recommendations to the board on applicants to be considered for the Youth Economy Program, and to perform other functions as assigned by the board. So within the board, there is an evaluation committee comprised of 3 people who will evaluate the proposals, the business plans, etc., that come to the board, Mr. Speaker. And the evaluation committee can co-opt people from other places to help them in the evaluation of that program. Mr. Speaker, the rest of, as it relates to the board, it deals with appointments, resignations, the minutes of the meeting, how meetings are supposed to be run, etc. These are the other functions of the board, Mr. Speaker. The board, Mr. Speaker, shall be run by a chief executive officer, a CEO, who will manage the day-to-day affairs of the agency. And the functions of the chief executive officer. The chief executive officer is to implement the strategic plan and compliance initiatives set by the board and other decisions of the board, to measure and attain performance targets approved by the board, to communicate decisions of the board, policies and priorities to the employees of the agency, to present organization performance reports and estimates of revenue expenditure to the board, and to attend meetings of the board unless directed otherwise. So the board appoints the CEO, Mr. Speaker, who will be involved in the day-to-day running of the agency, the Youth Economy Agency. So, Mr. Speaker, the other sections deals with the regular functions of the CEO. And, Mr. Speaker, as usual, we need accountability for the agency. And as I said before, the revenue of the agency comprises of monies raised by the agency in the form of loans, grants, investment, or other lawful means, sums allocated by the agency to the agency by Parliament, and that was the $10 million that we spoke of, Mr. Speaker, and any fees that the agency may charge, Mr. Speaker. The rest of the Act, as it relates to the agency, deals with the financial statements, Mr. Speaker. There must be an audit. The agency shall, within 3 months after the end of each financial year, have its accounts audited by an independent auditor appointed by the agency, shall conduct the audit in accordance with generally accepted international standards, Mr. Speaker. Then the agency shall submit to the Minister a quarterly report outlining data on the youth economy, etc., Mr. Speaker. These are the functions of the agency. Now, Mr. Speaker, you have the agency is run by the board and the evaluation committee, which is part of the board. Then, Mr. Speaker, you have the Youth Economy Program, which basically is what the youth economy is all about. And as I said before, the youth economy is designed to cause young people to convert their hobbies into entrepreneurship and their skills into business by getting involved in the Youth Economy Program. A young person may make an application to the board to access the youth economy program if the young person is a national, is operating a micro business enterprise for at least 1 year, or intends to operate a micro business enterprise. Mr. Speaker, and that is important. If he intends to, or if he is presently in, he or she is presently in, they can apply to the youth economy program. And then the young person must not be a bankrupt. We don't expect a young person to be a bankrupt, at least not yet. And he has no outstanding tax or social security obligations. That is customary, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, to apply to the program, there is a form, as is said in section 46(2), Mr. Speaker. Now, an application on section 2 must be in the prescribed form, accompanied by, in the case of a micro business enterprise, that means if the business is already existing, a certificate of incorporation or certificate of registration on the Registration of Business Names Act. And that is the difference, Mr. Speaker. One of the differences, where the value of the application is more than $5,000. If you are applying to the program for more than $5,000, you may have to get a banker's reference, if any. If you can't get a banker's reference, you have to produce a banker's reference. If you have financial statements, if any, you have to produce it. A business plan, if any. But, Mr. Speaker, where the value of the application is less than $5,000, if it's less than $5,000, Mr. Speaker, the only thing you have to present is the prescribed information or documents requested by the board. Now, I'll tell you why that is important, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are many, many young people who want to go into a micro business. Again, example, young people who do hairdressing, young people who want to get involved in animation, in graphic designs. They need a computer, they need a dryer, they need a chair if they're going into hairdressing, Mr. Speaker, which costs less than $5,000. All we are saying to them is that you do not have, as a start, you don't have to get certificate of incorporation, you don't have to get bank reference. You can come into the agency, you will be interviewed, and once you can satisfy the agency that you have the will and the discipline, and you have a certain market that you can service, Mr. Speaker, and the amount that you need is less than $5,000, you will get it without all the bureaucracy or all the paperwork that is needed. And that is aimed specifically, Mr. Speaker, at young people from the inner cities, young people with a low income. Their parents could not leave anything for them, Mr. Speaker. Their parents, they haven't got anything. Their parents, they don't have any money. The parents don't have any business, but they have an idea. And the idea will cost less than $5,000. So youth economy program will make that $5,000 available if you can follow certain criteria, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, having said so, if the young person is in business already and they want to get more than $5,000, the agency will help them to prepare a business plan. The agency will help them just prepare a business plan. The agency will help them to source markets and to prepare a marketing plan. And the agency will also help them in training to upscale themselves. And that has already started because there is a program being run at the MON for the Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Speaker, which is called upskilling, where young people are being trained to improve their skills. I think it is in hospitality and in health-related businesses, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, it is very important that young people who do not have what they call in the local language baka, who needs little amounts of money, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, can get it in quick time so that they can begin their small business. And from there, we will train them, we'll mentor them, and they can expand to get into for their business to grow, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are certain young people, Mr. Speaker, sometimes we say that young people, they're not ambitious, or they don't want to work, or they're lazy, etc. I don't think so. What I think is that we have to find means of employment that young people want to get involved in, things that they want to do. And sometimes, nothing wrong in working in hotels. I don't want anybody to misquote me. Nothing wrong, it's an honorable profession. Nothing wrong in working in call centers. They pay a decent wage. Absolutely nothing wrong in that. But there are young people who do not want to do these kind of things. Young people who want to go into agro-processing. Young people who want to go into a different type of agriculture. Young people who want to go, right now there are many young people involved in the bee industry, in the cultivation of bees. Young people, they want to go into that kind. They want to go into modern fishing. They want to get involved in areas that allow them to use their own expertise, use their own skill, use their own knowledge, Mr. Speaker. So what we want to do them, we want to train them, Mr. Speaker. To promote them, we want to train. So the youth economy program will comprise of a lot of training. We need to train them, Mr. Speaker, so that they can upskill, and as I said, that has already started in St. Lucia. We need to give them the opportunities. We came into the Honorable House and we passed a bill unleashing the Blue Economy program. The Blue Economy is a wide area of investment that is possible. We hope that young people can get involved in skills that are needed in the Blue Economy. Mr. Speaker, we need to organize these young people. And again, the Youth Economy Agency will help them organize, help them form into probably cooperatives, probably into small companies. They're helping them to organize so they can grow, Mr. Speaker, so they can bring their skills together and they can grow. Mr. Speaker, I'll give you an example. Every year, about 1 million tourists come to St. Lucia. It's about $700,000, 700,000 of them for cruise ships, and about 1 million come to St. Lucia every year, on average. There are several things that we can offer these tourists that can make them leave more of that money into St. Lucia. The Minister of Tourism has been lamenting, and the tourism industry, how a lot of the money leaves St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. The youth economy, and I'm sure there are young people. I'll give you an example. In the business of hair braiding, Mr. Speaker, there are many tourists who want to braid their hair like locals. What do these young people need? Probably a chair, a comfortable chair, probably, or something of that nature. The youth economy can help. In the business of massaging, what do they need? A table. We can assist, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the business of manicuring and pedicuring, just think about it. How would it be if a tourist comes and a young person can put on their fingernails a little map of St. Lucia, or like a flag like what I have on me there? You can imprint it on their nails, because young people, people have long nails, so you put St. Lucia on the end. Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure with support and because our young people are very, very, very talented. What they need is support, Mr. Speaker. And they really don't need a lot of money, They need support, they need direction, and they need training, Mr. Speaker. In modeling, Mr. Speaker, I mean, all of us will agree that St. Lucia has many attractive young ladies. What you laughing at? What are you laughing? Mr. Speaker, remember we put now for Mykonos. That's amused them. There are many very attractive young ladies in St. Lucia, and I may say not only young ladies, Mr. Speaker, young men too, men modeling too. You understand? So we can develop a serious modeling agency with these young people. Last there was a program, Export the Runway, Mr. Speaker. Look at the talent. What about all these designers? These people, the youth economy can encourage them, getting the necessary finance and helping them, creating opportunities for them, Mr. Speaker, creating avenues for them to reach global standards. Sports, Mr. Speaker, sports. We have to start to look at sports now even as an export crop. Because there are a number of leagues all over the world. Football, cricket, some of them basketball. Mr. Speaker, last year, a young man came to us, Mr. Speaker. He got a professional contract to play in France, to play basketball in France, Mr. Speaker. But because he wasn't fortunate, he didn't have anybody to give him any backer, he could not, his coach told him, once he gets to France, he will pick him up and he'll take care of him. Just has to get to France. He couldn't afford to get to France. He didn't have the money to get to France, Mr. Speaker. So what we are saying is we'll treat that as an economic issue, and it can come into the Youth Economy Agency and that is why we've put the $5,000 limit. He can come and probably get a ticket for him to go to France to play basketball. And these are the ways, these some of these we want to change people's lives, Mr. Speaker. So we wanted to cut the bureaucracy. We want to cut off some of the bureaucracy that exists for young people. Because young people get frustrated. And only some time ago we were speaking about the banks. Where to open a bank account, you need 2 forms of ID. So we want to cut off some of the frustration. And that is why, because $5,000 may sound as nothing, but for many young people, if they had $5,000, that would give them a serious start for what they want to do. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, we are making these changes or initiating that, Mr. Speaker. The business of incentives, Mr. Speaker. Every day we give incentives to all kind of all developers. We waive VAT, nothing wrong in that. They say we have to create the enabling environment for investment, Mr. Speaker. But what about a young person, Mr. Speaker? This bill says that if a young person wants to go into a business and the value of the incentives that he needs is less than $20,000 or less, the agency can award these incentives, Mr. Speaker. You don't have to go to cabinet, etc. Can be awarded, the agencies can be awarded, these incentives can be awarded to the young person if they want to bring in something, except things like motor vehicles, we won't give you that. But if you want to bring equipment or you want to bring, we'll get you instantly. Once it's approved, instantly you're going to get duty-free concessions. If it's above that, then you have to go through the normal procedure, Mr. Speaker. And what are these exemptions? 100% customs duty exemptions on imports, including fixtures and furniture and fittings. 100% duty exemption on imports of alternative energy and energy-saving equipment, devices, and fittings used for the approved youth economy project. 100% exemption from the payment of value-added tax on building material, equipment, and locally produced art and craft. 100% exemption from payment of corporation tax. Speaking about arts and craft, Mr. Speaker, the whole business of arts, of craft, I think in the last time we were in the House, we spoke about craft in Choiseul, Mr. Speaker. We know, again, we want to make it attractive for the young people so that they can get involved to bring it to a different level. Take it from where their parents had it and bring it to a different level, Mr. Speaker. We saw what can happen with bananas. And it was very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that some members of the opposition and the surrogates thought it was good, it was nice to believe that they were trying to make an image of me that I was somehow not correct when I spoke about bananas, Mr. Speaker. They tried to ridicule me when I spoke about the bananas. Mr. Speaker, if you see the amount of products that exhibition showed that bananas can do, Mr. Speaker, you will be surprised. The amount of bananas. So, and that is what, but what do these people need? What do they need? Just some working capital. Probably a little piece of equipment, Mr. Speaker, and they can convert these bananas, they can add value, Mr. Speaker. You see, we must have confidence in ourselves and confidence in our young people. And we have to create the environment for them, Mr. Speaker. We have to facilitate them, Mr. Speaker. We have to help them so that they can go forward. Some of them will make mistakes, Mr. Speaker. Some of them will make mistakes. Multi-million dollar businesses have started, they failed, and we help them. We created opportunity for them, Mr. Speaker. What must happen is that when a young person makes a mistake, especially when it's a mistake made in business, Mr. Speaker, we must not treat them as if they are outcasts and as if they are failures. And that is the mistake we make all the time. A failure in business, once you don't have backer, and once you don't have name, when you fail in business, they ostracize you. We need to change that, Mr. Speaker, because I'm sure there are many young people out there. And I don't want anybody to tell me that exists already. We have incentives, Tourism Incentives Act and microbusiness. And that's it. That's the argument that I'm going to hear. No, it doesn't exist yet. This is specialist. This is special for the young people of this country. It's special for them, Mr. Speaker. We don't want to get them. We know that there's micro business act and thing, which is good, but we want the young people to have their own space in the economics sphere. They need to have their own space, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, there are different types of businesses, and the program will accept and organize all of them. This is why it says it co-opts the board to look for expertise in other areas, Mr. Speaker. There are businesses that are less than a year old. They need a different kind of treatment. So businesses that exist already, Mr. Speaker. Let's go into the business of designing, Mr. Speaker. We can create a unique St. Lucian design. We can create our own designers. What do they need? Probably a computer, probably a machine. Probably they can take it to another level, Mr. Speaker. And that's what the youth economy aims at. That is what the agency will do, Mr. Speaker. Get young people to have more confidence in themselves, Mr. Speaker. Both if you're not in business yet and if you want to get into business, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, there is a large area of e-commerce and digital technology. Every young person has some form or has some knowledge in the digital economy, Mr. Speaker. But what happens? They can convert that into a business. We must create an environment by making sure there's access to broadband services. But what do they need? They need a computer, etc. So there are many people, young people, who can stay at their home and plug in to places in America as far as India and work from their home if they have necessary equipment for the digital economy. And that is what we want to create. These are the kind of entrepreneurs that we want to create, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, the operating model for the youth agency, Mr. Speaker, is we have to ensure that the capabilities of young people are taken into consideration. We have to make sure that there's a proper structure and a proper governance, because you can't run any agency or any business if there's not structure and governance. And we have to instill that discipline in our young entrepreneurs very early, that your profit is what you make after you've taken out your expenses. That structure, that discipline, and that is why there's going to be the education and the training. And training is an important component, because you may be a young person and you may have a business, and for the first year you have the sales are good, but what do? You take it and you put it in consumption. No, you mustn't do that. And that's the training that will come. And this is why there are going to be mentors to mentor these young people. Successful, honest businessmen. Stress the word honest. Successful, honest businessmen who have gone into business and who have succeeded. We can use them as mentors for these young people. And I'm sure there are many people who will want to do that. Music. Mr. Speaker, during the economic crisis, Jamaica survived on the music, on exporting music, Mr. Speaker. Music again is an export industry. We have the Denry segment. We can develop that business. We can develop that musical talent, Mr. Speaker. What about all the cultural activity that we have? Have we really, and I know again tourism is working, have we really taken our creative industries, and that is where young people are, and really made it into a business venture, creating dollars from our creative industries? Have we really done that? Have we really given the entertainment that tourists need, Mr. Speaker? Just very quickly, the cruise ships come to St. Lucia, and then they drive to Vieux-Fort, to Soufrière, to look for the sulfur springs. Can we not, in a very succinct way, create probably an enactment of the Laos Festival, and you package it in 20-minute segments and you present to tourists with a little history of what that is all about, Mr. Speaker. These are the things that we want to inspire our young people to do, Mr. Speaker. And that is the purpose of the Youth Economy Agency, to create that environment, to give young people only. And young people, there are people who are less than 45 years old. That is the people that we call young people as far as that bill is concerned, Mr. Speaker. People are less than 45 years old. And so we want to put them in their own space. Right now we are in the process of preparing the office, Mr. Speaker. And the office has to be young. It's got to be a young office. It's got to be an office where you have vibe in there. Vibe and agile and flexible. Right. Flexible and agile, Mr. Speaker. So because, I will hear the argument that exists already, that's nothing new. I hear that's our grips. What I'm saying is the first time we're going to have a dedicated agency for the young people of St. Lucia. First time, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, young people are very excited about it. And they're very excited about it, Mr. Speaker, because they yearn for something of that nature. They yearn to get into business. And we must ask ourselves, if we have all these established things working, all these things that we say we form, all these things we have, and then we have not got the benefits that we intend to get, why can't we change something? Why don't we do something new? Because we have all of them. We have all these things that we say we have. Maps and naps and all these things that we say we have. But why haven't we got the returns? And this is, to our mind, a dedicated agency dealing with leadership, financial management, business strategy, operational efficiency, sales and marketing, and human resources, all designed and designated for young people only. Working with young people, but being very transparent and accountable. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that we will see many young people converting their hobbies into entrepreneurship, Mr. Speaker, and their skills into business so they can create employment for themselves and develop, and I make no bones about it, we need to develop a new cadre of indigenous business people. And this is not being insular, or what, use any other word you want. It is to develop a local person, Mr. Speaker. We need to see people who live in the parts of St. Lucia that you all think are not think. We need to see them have businesses. We need to see them from Bellevue and from Marchand and from Wapatat and from Fula Show. We need to see them have businesses. We need to give them opportunity to create, to use their talents and their skills, Mr. Speaker. And I make no bones about it, Mr. Speaker, because all we do is that we just castigate people and put them in a corner because they have no name. Everybody has a name, Mr. Speaker. Everybody has a name. What you must do is you have to be given the opportunity to develop your name so that you can make a contribution to yourself and your society, Mr. Speaker. And that is what we hope. We hope this is the first step. The initial financing, Mr. Speaker, is $10 million. That's initial financing. But the Taiwanese, for the upskilling program, they will work with us, Mr. Speaker. What we intend to do is all the youth programs, we intend to bring it under one umbrella, Mr. Speaker. We intend to work with the Ministry of Agriculture, young people in agriculture, but bring them under one agency, the Ministry of Tourism, Mr. Speaker. We intend to work with them to create employment for young people in one economic space designed for the young people solutions. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I do not have much to say, Mr. Speaker, after the presentations by my colleagues. I want to thank them. I want to thank the explanation given by the members in different. And Mr. Speaker, the presentations this afternoon, it shows the depth and the degree of consistency and the different styles, Mr. Speaker, from members on the side. You heard the member for Castries Southeast, Mr. Speaker, with his twist of people's empowerment, equity, seen about the less privileged, Mr. Speaker. Then you heard the member for Viewfort North with his creativity, his love for the arts, his eloquence, Mr. Speaker, and putting it almost like a poem, as he did in the church on Sunday, Mr. Speaker. Then you heard the member for Labrie, Mr. Speaker, with a mixture of his knowledge of the science, his knowledge of flying, and put it all together, Mr. Speaker, and making us understand what this bill is about. But before, you heard the member from Miku North, with targeted simplicity, reaching out from his own experience, and explaining how the bill could have helped him and will help others who do not have the opportunity to do what he did with his life, Mr. Speaker. And this member for Miku North, you must always compliment him because he never felt sorry for himself. And this is something we say to young people all the time. Never feel sorry for yourself. Don't be a victim. When I speak to the guys on the block, I say, boss man, nothing running. I say, stop being a victim. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Rise up. And this is what he did, Mr. Speaker, and this is why he never did. And then the member for Cashew South, Mr. Speaker, who put in the intellectual understanding rooted in experience from the youth movement and rooted in the intellectual understanding of what we are doing today. So this is the combination of men and women. And then you heard Auntie Emma, the member for Sufra. And Mr. Speaker, I say Auntie Emma because I remember a joke. I was sitting on that side of the house. Mr. Speaker, the member for Vivo South and I, we have sat on both sides. Both sides. He sat there already, and I sat where you are, yeah, next to him, and then he sat here, and I sat here. You sit on both sides of the house, so we understand where it is. And then there was a gentleman who sat down there, Mr. Speaker, and they gave him a text to read. And for 46 minutes and 30 seconds, he said the most obscene and vile things about me. Vile. And I said to him, you see you're not coming back here. And he laughed. He said, who you thinking about? Auntie Emma? Auntie Emma? So that's why I'm laughing at Auntie Emma. But you heard, yes, right. So you heard the member for Sufra, and you heard she's a trained person, and you heard her express herself, Mr. Speaker. So it is this youth economy, Mr. Speaker, this youth economy bill. I want to make the point that what the members are speaking of are programs, a program. But this is legislation. It is law. It is embedded in the law of the country. And this is different. We're not talking about programs, boosts. They might be good. We're talking about law. We're putting in the law of the country a space for the young people of this country, an economic space which we call the youth economy. It's law. It's different to everything else you're doing. It's law. And it's the first time that we are legislating, telling young people you can go in the statutory books and there's a law that relates to your development. It's the first time, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, and this has created so much excitement. In the Cashew North constituency, we went to an exhibition on Sunday, some Sundays ago, and you could see the talent, the number of booths that were there, displaying all kinds of talent. They are anticipating because they are saying to themselves, and the member for Answer Can, Mr. Speaker, who again, his style was very gentle and mild, Mr. Speaker, and that is a style that they underestimate. And I can assure you, all those who underestimate him in Answer Canaries, they'll be surprised at the next election. But because they underestimated him, Again, there was one that's not too tall. All kind of aspersions on the guy's character. All kind of things, Mr. Speaker. These guys, they really insulted us, I mean, this was hurtful. One day they call him little boy. Shut up, boy. Shut up. Mr. Speaker, you don't want to be harsh, but sometimes you must disclose these things because you see how life turns around. And I remember telling them all the time, 4 years is not 40 years. And they laughed at me, Mr. Speaker. So what I'm saying to you, Mr. Speaker, is that you saw the youth in Cashew North with their exhibition showing off what they can produce, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, the youth economy is a different concept, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, I want to say two things. It's not the first time I'm hearing from the honorable members over there that we did something about Ojo Labs and NAPS. Let me tell you the story of NAPS, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, do you know we allowed the NAPS program to continue? We kept the manager, we kept him until, and this must be said, the manager, we kept him until his contract expired. The rest of the people in that program, Mr. Speaker, there was one of them, Mr. Speaker, who every night she said the vilest things about me on social media. The vilest things about me. And she kept We never touched her. We left her there until a contract expired, Mr. Speaker. But what the minister was telling you is they left a bill for us for Ojo Labs of nearly $500,000, which we settled, which we are settling. So we kept the staff and we paid the bills. And it comes back to what he spoke about when he spoke about Monroe College and the Initiative for International Hospitality Training. I have an email that says he left owing $429,000 to Monroe for what he's speaking about. So he set up all these things and refused to pay them and left us with the burden, Mr. Speaker. Monroe College, $429,000, Mr. Speaker. Then so, Mr. Speaker, so he comes and he speaks about these things glibly, Mr. Speaker, very glibly. He started all these programs, started them, and left it in debt, Mr. Speaker, and left us to pay, which we are paying, Mr. Speaker, among many other debts, Mr. Speaker. Then he speaks about the 12 million. Let me talk about it. $12 million. And he will know international airports. Cost overruns on the foundation. Cost overruns on the foundation. 767 piles according to the plan. And you put in 3,000. And 9 piles, Mr. Speaker. Cost overruns of over $40 million in the foundation of a project. On the foundation of a project. So, Mr. Speaker, so when you hear these things, Mr. Speaker, when you hear these discussions, these are facts, Mr. Speaker. These are facts. Based on these facts, yes, going up in the airport and just changing the site, just telling them put this building there. 3,000 piles from a plan of 767, $43 million of cost overruns. That's the burden on the taxpayers of this country, Mr. Speaker. That's the burden. On the foundation, elevated. Mr. Speaker, then, Mr. Speaker, we speak about different organizations. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and you have, Mr. Speaker, we have to discuss these things, Mr. Speaker. He speaks about the Central Development Bank. Mr. Speaker, I stood there, and I said to them, if you are bringing back the Central Development Bank, it's your policy. The member from Beaufort South, he spoke first at the ring. He made the point that he doesn't think that the development bank should come back undercapitalized. I said to them, if it's your policy, do your bank. That's your policy, the people, because I accept when the people make a decision. He passed his bill, Financial Development Bank. He was the one who set it up, Refused to capitalize it. Refuse the Development Bank. We're set up by the United States Party, yes. Yeah. And you could say, you didn't capitalize, right? He did not capitalize it, Mr. Speaker. It took us now to capitalize the International Development Bank to make it play a meaningful community.
When you reincarnated,
yes, started in the beginning, yes. Mr. Speaker, then he comes with a series, output per acre. Now, if you're not thinking, you say, but that's a real serious point, output per acre. That's a brilliant thing by Aruba, smaller than St. Lucia, output per area. Singapore, smaller than St. Lucia, output per area. And Barbados, output per area. And you say, and you sing, and you say, really, what is he talking about? Oh, Mr. Speaker, Aruba is a very flat country, very flat. Barbados is extremely flat. St. Lucia, the topography is different. So the output per acre in these countries must be more because they have more development space. Very simple. In Barbados and Antigua, Antigua has 265 beaches. St. Lucia, we have limited beach space because a lot of our country is hilly. So we have to make use of the hills. But don't talk about, but output per acre is not a proper statistic.
But they have nothing called output.
But even though they have one, is that right? Output per acre. Aruba is a flat country. Aruba is a very flat country. So how you talking about? So Aruba must have more output per acre for buildings because it's a flatter country. So what's the point? But these things sound good. These things sound nice. And if you're not thinking, you say, well, that man is a real serious fella, that man have good ideas. That man have good plans. But that's what I've always told solutions. Listen carefully when politicians speak. Listen. Listen. You understand? Output per acre. Then he speaks about, always makes a point about St. Lucia. But that's the same member who was on television saying that one thing the government should do is remove VAT on electricity. He said, and I think some of them, another one echoed the same thing, but in a different way. He said part of the measures the government should take to stem the problem is remove VAT on electricity. My members of parliament, I'll give you my whole salary if you show me one electricity bill in St. Lucia with VAT on it. But these are the things. You and then I can play it for you on my phone, You were on public media saying that the government should remove VAT on electricity because you heard it said in Barbados. I mean, you can do that, man.
You think it was deliberate?
Deliberate. Because what happens? When he says so, he'll get some people say, yeah. You see, they must take out VAT on electricity. This is what the government is doing. You're thinking about it. But he knows it's not true, He knows it's not true. He knows there is no electricity on VAT, no on water. Then he goes and then comes and talks about we must remove import duty on foodstuff. He knows very well that St. Lucia has the most items that are 0 rated or VAT exempt. He knows that because the IMF tells him that all the time. But just to cast aspersions and not to admit that we live in different, he says so. Then he says something else. He says that government must take some of the revenue that they make from what he says? From this CIP to pay this and that. That's what he says. He knows very well, Mr. Speaker, that the fuel tax, one of the most secure revenue streams for the government of St. Lucia. And he also knows that because of the cost of fuel, the revenue stream from fuel is sometimes 0 or minimal. But he also knows that we must meet all the expenses without that revenue stream, and he has borrowed everything he could borrow under the COVID relief program. He knows that. He knows that, Mr. Speaker.
800 million.
In 1 year, he borrowed $329 million. And when we came in July 17th, July 26th, we only had $19 million to spend. And we did not borrow any money except going in the RSM. Mr. Speaker, but it's important. And a friend of mine says to me, I should not respond to these things. But you know, it's that non-response that makes people believe these things. Because these things sound good, especially when you say it with an accent. It sounds very good, Mr. Speaker. But you know, they say I'm stammering, so I rather. But these things, you say these things, but I must put the holes in these things because people believe it. Today, we give pensioners their $500. Not too much, but at least we showed an indication we want to assist them in their plight. A tangible way to assist them, Mr. Speaker. Today, the NIC decided that, among other things, they would give an increase in pensions to all the pensioners, Mr. Speaker. These are tangible things the government is doing to assist. But the government cannot continue if something else doesn't happen. Right now, 14% of our expenses are used to pay debts. You understand? And salaries and wages. St. Lucia has, and the ECCB proved that yesterday, they showed that St. Lucia has the highest wages and salaries bill in the entire ECCU region. Over 40% is used to pay salaries and wages. But still for that, we still paid the civil servants their 1% increase in spite of that, and we're going to pay them their back pay in December. Something that the last government negotiated. They could not do it, but we are going to pay it, Mr. Speaker. So it's not easy. You did not do it. So it's not easy, Mr. Speaker. So what I'm saying to the member from Mico South is hold your horse. Take your time. You went and you lost Mico North. Mico North. You presided over a party that lost Mico North. The late Sir John must be turning in his grave. He must be turning his grave for you to preside over a party and lose Mico North. And why said he was campaigning in Bagatelle? Coming after me. Anyhow, Mr. Speaker, so, Mr. Speaker, the youth economy, Mr. Speaker, is a model piece of legislation, the first of its kind, which legislates a space for young people. And it's just the beginning, Mr. Speaker. We put in $10 million now, and again, the member from Mico South said, that's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. He said that this, if we see this is a micro bank, did not even read, Mr. Speaker. Did not even read the law, the legislation. That's what you say there?
Let him pass outside.
Let me tell you something. Go to town, and call your name and call my name and say lie. You whatever say. let's go. You and I walk to town. Let's go now. Anybody, just say lie, and you see what the point is. Challenge. Let's go. Talk about lie. Let's make a wrong in tongue.
Let's go by that.
Anyway, let's go by that. We are that we have a scene by that. Let's go there.
Let's go by that.
And just say lie. They say you. Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker. The Youth Economy Agency, Mr. Speaker, will be positioned as the premier agency devoted to young entrepreneurs in St. Lucia. It will help create and develop strong youth businesses through financing, advisory services, and capital with a focus on micro business. The youth economy supports young entrepreneurs as indicated in the industries that they like. And remember, in modeling, in sports, in creative industries, it will support young entrepreneurs at all stages of development while working in collaboration with business centers across St. Lucia. It will not be in isolation, it will work in collaboration with them, Mr. Speaker. is committed to long-term success of young entrepreneurs, and the Youth Economy Agency understands that a business is just more than dollars and cents. It's about linkages. It's about creating synergies. That's what it's all about. Not only about dollars and cents, Mr. Speaker. And it complements, and that's what many of us shows there. It will complement the role played by private sector financial institutions. So when in the youth economy, we'll do the training, we will do the mentoring, and if there's a certain situation, we can can get assistance from other private sector organizations. That's what it's all about. It's about creating these synergies, creating that atmosphere for young people, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, on our 1 year anniversary, Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud, with the support of the members of this side, Mr. Speaker, to have this bill in the House of Assembly. As we speak, we are preparing the building, Mr. Speaker. We are preparing the building for the Youth Economy Office, Mr. Speaker. And it's a building that have a lot of vibe. It's a building that will be for young people. A building that will make young people feel it'll be a technologically advanced building. For young people to, because we need to make young people understand that they have value, right? We passed the Firearms Act to punish those who violate the law, but this will have value, Mr. Speaker. So we are in the process of preparing the building, of outfitting the building. Then we will go into the process of appointing the board. Then we will begin actual operations, Mr. Speaker. And as you said, your people from Choiseul, that is not in our DNA. We are not people who discriminate. You know that. And sometimes in previous life, when the member of Vieux South was Prime Minister and he spoke about equity, equity meant equity for everybody in the country. So we're not like you, not like your party. We don't discriminate. We do not do it. And that is why you are soon going to get your allocation for your school education this year, as you got last year, which is more than you can say for us, Mr. Speaker. Because in my entire period, Vieux South, Castries South, Labrie, Mikunov, Denwinoff, Mr. Speaker, we did not get 1 cent from this government for any program in our constituency. Not 1 cent, Mr. Speaker. Not 1 cent for any person in our constituency for their development. But we are not like that, so you'll get your fair share of the youth economy. But these things have a way of coming back to haunt you. Because I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, do you know last year, 9 o'clock by this time, there was celebration in St. Lucia? 9 o'clock, Mr. Speaker, the town had been painted red at 9 o'clock. Red and in some places blue. At 9 o'clock, Mr. Speaker. 9 o'clock last year, the town was in blue, was in red, Mr. Speaker. 9 o'clock last year, 9 o'clock. And Mr. Speaker, by Thursday, let's go by Nax. Let's go there.
You're brave enough.
Let's go and let's say lie. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much. And again, I want to thank my colleagues. I want to thank the people of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. The times are challenging, but it's exciting. And the young people of St. Lucia know that the government has a plan for them to improve their lives and to create sustainable employment for them. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.